All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Saturday, March 1st. Happy March Madness. Be the first to wish everybody a happy March Madness. Right here for your daily fix of all things Texas Longhorns. I'm Tanner Carlson. That is Jake Jimerson. You are listening to All In Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. Today's episode, we're basically going to be doing NFL draft talk. We're going to talk the top 10 linebackers in the NFL draft. And so last week, we're going to do this series leading up to the NFL draft to give you a little precursor. Started last Saturday by giving you our top 10 running backs of this year's class. And this is just me and Jake's rankings. These are just me and Jake. We're not getting these numbers from, we're obviously looking at who is in the draft, but we're not just grabbing lists from other places and just giving you 1 through 10. This is just me and Jake knowing these players, watching some of these players, being introduced to some of these players for the first time while watching these guys and making these lists and presenting them, giving you a quick, prediction of where we think, if I were a GM, where would I draft this guy? And if he fell to me and say the 4th round, is that a steal? Am I reaching if I get him in the 3rd? One of those types of things. And so anyway, we'll give you a quick little synopsis of what we think of the player and some shortcomings of these players. And then maybe we revisit these after the draft is all said and done, maybe 3 years from now. And we say, man, we were way wrong on so-and-so. Oh man, I hit that one right on the head. So on and so forth. So without further ado, Jake, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Big slate of college basketball games on today. But we will spend this episode specifically on the NFL draft. And then come Tuesday's episode next week, we'll kind of recap the weekend happening of what happened in college basketball on the men's and women's side. So without further ado, Jake, go ahead and let's get into this.
Yeah. First, I just wanted to kind of say my overall thoughts on the linebacker class, which I don't know how we haven't talked about it at all yet off air. To me, there's not really and I kind of got, we do look at list, just to, see what other people think. You look at other experts list and you get an idea of what some people are thinking. And my list is different drastically from some of those, but there's definitely not a clear, a lot of people would of course say, Walker would be the clear number 1 of this. But I've seen plenty of people put others at number 1. I have a different linebacker at number 1 than Walker. I can tell you that right now. And so I don't think this linebacker class is exactly loaded, but I do think there's some depth there and there's some guys that have a chance to surprise. But I think the hybridness of a lot of off the ball linebackers playing a lot of edge has kind of hurt there being true linebackers that just play off the ball linebacker and excel at being an all around linebacker. I don't think there's a lot of all around great linebackers in this class. But one guy I do think is a little bit of an all around linebacker, and I do think his play can really translate to the NFL is Demetrius Knight Jr. out of South Carolina. That is my number 1 linebacker, just barely over Jalen Walker. I have him at a draft grade at 7.75. Gives you an idea. I mean, like I had Ashton Genty, I think at like a 9.25. These are subject to change before the overall rankings come out because still kind of tweaking as I go. But I really liked him. My question on him is whether or not, and I don't know anything of if there are character issues, but just when you see a guy who gets dismissed from a program in Georgia Tech in his 3rd year, goes and plays FCS ball, then transfers to South Carolina, was terrific at South Carolina. And I had I ended up watching, I think like half an hour of his film, just straight. I was only expecting to watch a little bit. I'd seen him play several times during the year, so I already had a good idea on him. So I expected to watch less film, but I ended up watching, and I shouldn't have said half an hour, I should have said an hour and a half straight of just his film, where I just kept jumping between videos and finding different games from him during the season. And he kind of is a little bit of an all-around linebacker. He's decent in coverage. His coverage is the one area where he could improve, but he attacks the ball. He has great frame. He's got great strength. He's got great power at the point of attack. And he is currently my number one linebacker. Did you just want me to go like 1 through 5? Kind of
Yeah,
like
yeah. Give your 5. Yeah.
2, I do have Jalen Walker. Jalen Walker was interesting. I expected to like him a little bit more than I did. I will say I do like his versatility. I do think he can go at edge, but even at edge, I was kind of shocked. He really needs to develop more moves. He's just kind of relied on his freakish athletic ability.
Yeah.
Is freakish. He has the highest ceiling by far of any of these players this year. His ceiling is all pro level. But I think his floor is maybe a little lower than some people expect. I don't think he will just be a bust. Which, by the way, I do have Demetrius Knight Jr. I think he'll go in the second round. I forgot to say that, and I think Jalen Walker will go in the first round because that freak. Even though he's
where would you draft them? Not where you think they're going to go.
Yeah, where would I draft them? I mean, linebacker's kind of weird right now, and I think this class lacks like top, just clear cut. They're going to be an NFL stud.
Yeah.
Demetrius Knight Jr., I'd look at him late in the first, early in the second. Jalen Walker, ironically, I'd still probably look at him higher than Demetrius Knight Jr. just from his ceiling. I mean, mid first, late first round for him. He'll probably he could go higher than that, but I do think there's flaws there.
He'll be the 32nd pick in the NFL draft this year. Jalen Walker.
You think so?
I think he'll go to Philly.
Oh, yeah.
And he'll be a stud.
I did think about just on projection, just putting Philly
for the Georgia Eagles. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And for Smile Munden Jr. as well. Just putting Philly. Because they all go there and it's worked out for them pretty damn well. And Jalen Walker could end up being an all-pro. I'm not saying he's not going to be, but I just think there's more development that needs to be done there than a lot of people realize. He hasn't had a ton of snaps. His coverage ability is very limited. There's very little film of him in coverage. And when he's on the edge, almost all of his sacks are just him out quicknessing a tackle or out overpowering a tackle. There's not like a spin move, a swim move. There's not a bunch of
it's a bull rush
in the arsenal. Yeah. It's a bull rush or it's a speed move. And so I think if he wants it bad enough and has a great work ethic and goes to a good, developer, I think he can be an absolute stud in the NFL. But I just wanted to spend a little more time on him because I do think he is what most people consider to be the crown jewel of this class for linebacker. I just was a little surprised I didn't like his tape more than I did, just because I remember him in the Texas game being, terrifying. But there are definite faults in his game. Third, I have Jihad Campbell from Alabama, and I think he'll be an early mid-second round pick. That's about where I would look at him as well. And I have him at a 7.5 out of 10. I have these top three pretty closely grouped because I do think they are similar. Jihad Campbell, he is maybe the best coverage linebacker in the class. I think he's probably trying to think. He might be the best all-around linebacker, maybe highest floor, but I don't think his ceiling is as high as Demetrius Knight Jr. or Jalen Walker. But I think his floor is probably a little bit higher because I do think he's an all-around stud. He only had a 5.5% missed tackle rate in 2024, which is stupid. And I know Alabama's defense wasn't great. The only thing in his game I noticed that I wasn't sure on was just sometimes misdirection would get him. And that is something you look at the NFL level, especially against some of the best offenses. So that's something he'll have to improve on, is that first step and kind of not having motion misdirect him so much. But his film, he was one of the funnest linebackers to watch for me. And I think he's going to at worst be a good NFL player. And that has a lot of value in itself.
It absolutely does. Some teams, their tiebreaker is who has the highest floor, who's going to be who who has the potential at worst of being just a good role player for this team.
Yeah, and at worst, I feel like he would be a good role player. Could be wrong. You never know. The NFL, it depends on a lot of intangibles to a point, and then just
And then there's
player
also
work
luck,
ethic,
injuries, a lot of things, a lot of factors in play.
Yeah. Next, Barrett Carter out of Clemson. He is a heat-seeking missile. That is the first thing I have. Because the first bit of film I watched of him was just him firing downhill and just knocking someone's head off. His biggest issues are that is his strength. That is his thing. He's going to have to develop a lot of areas around his game to be really successful at the NFL level. Right now, I think he's a limited role player for rundowns, which is becoming more and more important again in the NFL. The run game has made a resurgence in the NFL. So I do think there's a role to be carved out for him, especially for an NFC team. I think he's almost a conference specific player in a way, but he does have a tendency to get washed up at the second level. But he has an awesome frame he is NFL ready at 6'1", 230. I think his frame is about maxed out. He has really good speed. But another thing with getting washed up at the second level, his angles aren't great at times. That kind of stood out on film. But if you can develop a couple of those weaknesses and turn them into strengths in his game, I do think he has a pretty high ceiling. But that floor is probably a little bit lower than those other players. I have him down at a 6.8 out of 10. I think he'll go in the third round, and that's realistically, I probably wouldn't look at him until middle of the third round. Maybe early in the third round, just depending how the draft falls. Once you start getting that third round, it really just depends how the draft's falling, because sometimes you just have a run on players at a certain position. And then that was what, 4? Yeah. So 5, Danny Stutzman, out of 0U, as I have them put down here on the sheet, 6'3", 241. I've talked about, when we did, an interview earlier this year, during OU Hate Week, about how we talked about players that you want to not see in the opposing uniform anymore. Stutzman was the top of that list, and that was out of respect. I do think I think his game is not necessarily maxed out, but I don't think you're just going to see him become a all-pro level linebacker.
I don't think that there's another level. Like there is development to be had without question. I don't think that he is going to accomplish this just like unlock a Super Saiyan, secret power of his once he gets to the NFL level.
Yeah, and part of that is just because change of direction speed is not something you're going to see just all of a sudden drastically get better. And that's probably his biggest weakness. Now, the thing with that is, while that's his biggest weakness, he is the best linebacker in this class at having no wasted movement. Just none. I mean, when he is going somewhere, it is the right place to be. I think he has the highest football IQ out of this group. And so I think his floor is pretty high. I have a hard time seeing him not just coming in and being able to produce at near a starting linebacker level in the NFL and just be that his whole career, especially if he can stay away from injuries. He's pretty good in coverage. He's not elite. He's not terrible. But he's not someone I think you just want to, you're not going to put him man to man, especially. Sure. He only needs to be in zone. But I did have put down, sometimes he doesn't make a great effort at recovering fumbles in the end zone, particularly.
in particular. But yeah, all right, Jake, my top 5, I actually have the exact same top 3. I have a different order of my top 3. I'm actually going to go with Jihad Campbell as number 1. He's my 1-1. In fact, I would like to see him go in the first round. I see the same deficiencies that you see. I think that I had there seems to be, for whatever reason, I don't know if it is just a reactive thing, but on the plays that he misses, that he does not make, it's because he's a second to a half a second behind where he needs to be. And I don't know if he's overthinking it. I don't know if he's seeing it quick enough. But some of those deficiencies, it's just like you need to be here, but you're here. And in the NFL, that is a make or break, especially with a running back like Saquon Barkley. If you need to be in this spot, but you're in this spot, you could be giving up a 60-yard touchdown. And it's that small of a margin of error in the NFL. And so it's those types of things that if he can tighten those things up, Jake, everything you said positive wise from him, he is, in my opinion, the best natural middle linebacker, field general, sideline to sideline player that this draft has to offer at the linebacker position. And because of that, I want that in my linebackers. I can kind of, I feel like if you're coachable, if you put in the work ethic, you can fix the other things that we were kind of talking about as deficiencies. There are some other things for some of these players that I don't think you can fix. I don't know if you can get much faster, at the linebacker position. Sure, you can develop and you can get there, but there are some certain things that maybe aren't coachable, like your size. Are you too undersized? Or if you put on too much weight, are you going to lose that speed? So on and so forth. So anyway, and then I have Jalen Walker as my number 2. He's your number 2, I believe. All the same reasons you said. I believe he'll go first round. I actually have a second round grade on him, but very high second round. I mean, I think he would be, if I were selecting, I'd be very comfortable, with the Cleveland Browns taking him in the second round. I don't know if he'll be there. Don't think he'll be there. I just don't think. I honestly am at a point too in today's NFL. Now, again, there's kind of been a shifted tide with running the football, so linebacker may be becoming more important. But at least recently, linebacker is not highly coveted. Edge rushers, yes. Linebackers, not as much when it comes to getting drafted high in the NFL draft. Like a Rolando McClain does not exist coming out anymore of getting drafted higher. A Luke Kuechly is not in this class. Like there just isn't those caliber of players, and the need for middle linebacker also is not there at the NFL level.
And that may be why Jalen Walker goes in the first, because he does have some versatility to play edge as well.
Sure. Yeah, he does. Number 3, Jake, I do have your guy at number 1, Demetrius Knight, for the same reasons that I saw from you. I mean, he's a top 50 graded linebacker according to PFF. Again, I don't like going off PFF, but he is a top 50 graded linebacker. He does have a lot of experience. He's played a lot of college football, and he's versatile. That's kind of what I like about Demetrius Knight is he is capable of playing more than just in the middle. You can kind of push him outside. You can play him in different positions. You can put him on the line and have him rush the passer, but he's also good against the run, and he's good in coverage. I think the two things that I saw best that I liked at him was not necessarily rushing the passer, but stopping the run and playing in coverage. Again, I like my linebackers to play a certain role. It's that Luke Kuechly, Patrick Willis, be a heat-seeking missile when it comes to stopping the run and play good coverage and have a high football IQ, because you are the quarterback of the defense. It's a very important position, despite what the NFL values when it comes to the NFL draft. Same thing with running back. A very highly valued player on the field, for whatever reason, not valued very high in the draft. But he's my number 3. At number 4, Jake, I've got someone I don't believe, wasn't in your top 5 anyway, Chris Paul Jr. And it was not because I think he is related to Chris Paul, the basketball player, but Chris Paul Jr. out of Ole Miss, Mary Kate University, 6'1", 235. We talked about the frames from some of the earlier players. He's got the perfect size, perfect frame to be a successful linebacker, and he put up a great 2024 seasons in terms of his grades. His highest graded game was just below 90 against LSU. Now, LSU's offense, neither here nor there, maybe not great, but he had a great game against LSU. And whenever you see players make that type of impact on the road, it always tends to jump out. But he did have a really good game. I like what he can do there. I would draft Chris Paul low second, maybe even pushing third round. Again, I think your value drops. I think you've got 3 guys up here, that first, second caliber guy. And then there's a significant drop off. Not to say these guys can't contribute right away their rookie year or even, later on and becoming starters in the NFL throughout their career. I just think there's a significant drop off in terms of what the draft is looking for with some of these guys. And I think it starts kind of right after Demetrius Knight. You go Chris Paul, there's a pretty big drop off. And then I've got Ohio State linebacker Cody Simon. I don't know if I'm just going to be like biased towards this Ohio State team, but I really like what Cody Simon did. Watched him throughout the playoffs. I watched him in real time. It just seemed like anywhere a running back was playing, he was there to make a stop. And he just was always in the thick of things, always making a play. But I really like Cody Simon's ability to stop the run. And like you said, maybe that's a conference fit. Maybe it depends on what team is drafting where, if they want him. I could see him going in the second round. I really could. I wouldn't be surprised if a team went up and took a Cody Simon in the second round. But I would be comfortable if I were a GM, say of the Dallas Cowboys, and I was a multi-billionaire oil rig company guy. I would probably I would feel more comfortable with him back into the third round, kind of closer towards the fourth round, if I were said GM. But those are my top five. I've got Campbell, Walker, Knight, Paul, Simon.
Yeah, I will say I don't have Simon in my top 10, but I probably could have put him there. I think he has a ton of upside. I just thought he was limited in what his film showed. But I think second round is crazy. I don't think
Jake,
he'll go second round.
That's why we do that. That's why we do these things.
Yeah. I mean, you and I are fairly different because what I'm going to talk about Chris Paul Jr. is drastically different from things that you said. So at 6, I was surprised to put him this high. I probably have him too high. I just really liked his film, and that is Carson Schlesinger from UCLA.
Yeah.
He just has dog.
He's on my list.
He's got dog in him, and I like the way he plays. He's too small. That is his biggest problem. He's 6'2", 225, and he looks like a stick at times.
Yeah,
but
he made on some weight.
What I love about him is he can come in and at worst, an absolute worst case scenario, he is going to be a special teams demon instantly. He had a block punt this year. Every time he's on the field, no matter where he's at, he is impacting the play. His biggest issue to me was just he's small. He needs to bulk up. He was extremely productive. He had 136 tackles last year for UCLA.
Yeah.
He had 4 sacks, 8.5 tackles for loss, and 2 interceptions and a blocked punt. I mean, he was a really effective blitzer. He's got really good speed. He's pretty strong for being a smaller frame, but that frame is a big issue because when you're going against linemen that are all 6'7", 325 and up, you're just going to get washed up in that second, in that second area, second level, he's just going to get washed away in the NFL. He needs to build on that frame. If he can bulk up, though, I do think he has some upside. And I know some people really fall in love with him and put him top 5 even. I couldn't go that high, even though I do love his tape, just because there has to be more strength added.
Yeah. And Jake, just think about I always have to do this. You can't fall in love with the tape that you see in college football whenever you compare it to what the Philadelphia offensive line looks like. And you're trying to get a guy like Schlesinger to stop the run and stop Saquon Barkley. And he's got, an all-pro guard and they say Jordan Mailata come beaming down on him, on a pool. He's going to get washed. I mean, he's going to get absolutely destroyed. And so, when I have to put it in my brain of like that mindset of like, is this guy a starting worthy linebacker at the NFL level? Probably not. when it comes to deficiencies like size and strength and things like that.
Yeah. I have this slightly out of order. I'm going to try to go in order here. Yeah. Next, I have a tie, but I'm going to go with the one I like more. Kobe King from Penn State. Did not expect to have him in my top 10.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely didn't expect him to be up this high. I just think he is a plug and play player, at least in early downs. Gonna have to see more from him out of coverage and on pass rush, and that is an issue. I mean, he's not going to provide you much rushing the passer unless it's blitzing, and he just shoots the gap well. But he doesn't really have any pass rush moves. His coverage is iffy, and so he definitely needs to develop on that side. But when it comes to stopping the run, his tape was fun to watch, and he's got a great frame, 6'1", 245. Plenty quick for being a bigger frame, and he has a lot of strength to his game. He's really strong at the point of attack. When he makes contact with you, you're hitting the ground first. He is not. And I just the name, and I just you talk about, you look at the player's college film, then you visualize, can this fit in the NFL? And for him, I think it does. I think his game translates to the NFL at worst as an early down or running down situation linebacker to start. And then if you can develop that pass rush side and develop the coverage a little bit more, he could be an every down linebacker. I think he's probably going to go in the 5th round. I would look at him in the 4th even. I think he'll probably go in the 5th. And I think he's one of those guys that you could end up looking at in a few years.
Jake,
and
I
being,
think,
wow, that was a steal.
Do you agree with me whenever I say that I think this linebacking class, the meat and potatoes of this linebacking class in terms of where they're going to get selected is anywhere between the 3rd, 4th round, maybe a little bit of the 5th. But I think a lot of these guys you're going to start seeing come off the board late 3rd, going into the 4th, maybe somewhat into the 5th.
I think all 10 of these guys will go in the 5th and before.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of those will be in the 3rd to the 5th round.
Yeah. I think that 3rd, 5th round range is where a lot of these linebackers hold their value mostly.
We're going to see a run of linebackers in the 3rd or 4th round at some point. It is my prediction as of right now. Then I will have Chris Paul Jr. I thought I was going to like him more than I ended up liking him. And it's because he's listed at 6'1", 224. He looks like a safety.
Oh, I see. I've got him at almost pushing 240.
He looks like 210 to me on film.
He looks skinny. Yeah.
I mean, his legs look like a cornerback. I don't think the frame is there right now at all. I think the speed is there. He plays a little bit stronger than his frame looks. And I did think one of his best games was against Georgia. I do think he elevates his play against good competition. And I think he's going to test great in like change of direction drills. You talk about Stuntsman's weakness being change of direction. That's his strength. That's Chris Paul Jr.'s strength. His quickness and his ability to change directions is some of the best out of this whole class. I just think he's going to get annihilated at the 2nd level at times. I don't think his point of attack strength is that good as well. Seemed a lot of times, I just talked about Kobe King. When he tackles someone, they're hitting the ground first. When he tackles someone, he's hitting the ground first.
Ooh, yeah.
I felt like he was getting just, the running back was getting 2 to 3 extra yards, and that scares me for NFL play. I think he has a really, really high ceiling, but I think he has a really, really low floor. I mean, I think his floor is not even contributing, but I think his ceiling is being a stud. Because obviously I think that checks out with your evaluation being quite a bit higher than where I have him.
Sure.
And I can see your side of it. But I just, when I look at it, I care about that floor quite a bit. It's not everything,
but it's a factor, and it's a valid reason for concern.
There was a lot of concern there. Next, I have Smile Munden Jr. out of Georgia. He would be higher if it wasn't just for pure injury concerns. His whole career has been injuries. He was a 5-star linebacker coming out of high school. He's lived up to that when he's on the field. The key there is when he's on the field. He is a freak athlete. He has the most fluid movement, I think, of any of the linebackers. He does the best job at navigating traffic. At that, we've talked about some of these players being concerned about them getting washed away at that 2nd level. Zero concern about Munden Jr. with that. His ability to navigate through traffic and then just come out of a swarm of people hitting a running back for a loss was incredible in the tape. I thought he did the best job at navigating traffic out of any of the linebackers. But for me, those durability concerns, when you look at it to the NFL level,
And
are huge.
It's a high impact position too.
Yeah.
And that's what's also scary.
I could see a team reaching for him in the fourth, and I could see that paying off. I could also see him being almost a Sean Lee type player, where when he's on, maybe not to that extreme, but where he's on the field, you're like, wow, this guy is a freak. And then you're just missing him, 70% of the time.
Yeah.
And then last on my list of top 10 is Jeffrey Bassa out of Oregon. He's at 6'1", 226, right around where Chris Paul Jr. is. I also think he looks smaller than what he's listed at. He is a safety converted to linebacker. His coverage skills are really good when it's not play action. I did think he got lost a lot in play action.
Yeah.
He's really quick. He lacks a lot of power at the point of attack. He's definitely one that's going backwards when he gets hit. And he needs to improve at working through traffic. I just talked about with Smile Mountain Jr. how good he is at that. That is a big weakness for Jeffrey Bassa. Great name, by the way.
Yeah.
Just name wise, would love for him to be good, but he's not really elite at getting off blocks.
I think Smile Munson has probably the best linebacking name. I mean, that and Kobe King, great linebacking.
Kobe King, I can just see it.
That's a great linebacker name.
Yeah. But yeah, he's very. I mean, his movement's great, and like I said, he's converting from safety to linebacker, so there's a lot of room to develop him. His production wasn't great. He's been hurt at times, and so I think he's another one of those decently high ceilings, but very low floor players. I wouldn't touch him until the fifth, probably, maybe even the sixth, but maybe the fifth round.
All right, Jake, I'm going to wrap up mine fairly quickly because we're pushing the 30 or pushing past the 30-minute mark. And so
we may have to do top fives. It's tough doing 10 because I want to talk about each player.
Yeah. For number 6, Jake, I think I had the same number 6 as you. I've got Carson Schwessinger from UCLA. Same reasons that you had. I think he's just kind of that dog. I kind of love his mindset of playing linebacker, but does he have the body to follow that mindset up? Is really the only thing kind of holding him back. I could see him going as high as the low second, early third round. I could also see him dropping down to the 5th round, to be completely honest with you. I do think that there is going to be value to be had with him, but it just really depends on where these NFL scouts and where these coaches think they can develop him, turning and putting on weight without losing that speed. But he definitely has the brain of a linebacker. He's kind of got that a little bit of screws loose up top with him. Next, I've got Jack Kaiser from Notre Dame, someone that wasn't on your list. I was a little surprised that he didn't crack your top 10. I like what Jack Kaiser can do. To me, he is that like veteran led. He's a graduate. He's going to be, I think, almost 25 whenever the draft comes around. I mean, the dude's put in some experience, but he's just a smart player, all around, knows where to be on the field, a field general, if you will. And I tend to lean that way when it comes to my middle linebackers. I love a guy who can kind of direct the defense where they need to be at, and just a smart, headsy player. Does he have an immediate impact? I don't know, but I do think that he can get NFL ready sooner than some of these other guys that we're talking about that have a body deficiency when it comes to the size.
Yeah, 2 seconds. I'm going to go ahead and put him in over Jeffrey Bassa.
Okay.
I actually, you talking about it, me thinking back to watching, I was like, I like him more than Jeffrey Bassa.
He's a hard player not to like because his floor is a higher floor player. He just maybe doesn't have a very high ceiling. His floor is here, his ceiling's here.
The low ceiling was the reason why I didn't have him in that top 10, but I don't think that Bassa's ceiling is that much higher. So that's why I talked myself into it. So I'm changing that.
No worries. That's what the draft is all about. And then I will add Danny Stutzman. This is not a bias because I'm a Longhorn. He's top 8. I think he's got a place in the NFL. I think he actually can make a bigger impact on special teams sooner than he would otherwise. But yeah, I do think depending on what team drafts him and how they use him is going to be crucial. Because if you're going to use him like a Jack Campbell at Detroit, I don't think it's going to work out like that, But I think it just depends systematically who the supporting cast is around him. If he goes to Carolina, that's going to be a tough fit for him. But could he fit somewhere else? Maybe like a Baltimore or Pittsburgh? Sure, I could see it working out that way for him.
Pittsburgh's perfect.
Right. It just depends. Systematically, it's going to have to be the right fit for a Danny Stutzman to have the success that Oklahoma fans want to see him play at the NFL level. Again, mid-round pick, like a lot of these guys. Not lastly, but my number 9, Jay Higgins from Iowa. He's a little lower on a lot of lists, Jake, but for whatever reason, I like this guy, man. I just think talk about a frame. He's 6'2", listed at 232, so kind of a slimmer, a slimmer physique. But the dude's fat. I mean, he can go sideline to sideline. He's there in a hurry, and he reads the run really well. Obviously, he's an Iowa product, so all they practice against is the run. He can play coverage, but I think what he is best at is that sideline to sideline, closer to the line of scrimmage type of linebacker. But I do like him maybe as maybe a project player. I'd like to see him get on a roster, get as a camp body, see him in preseason, see how he does. But if he gets picked in the 6th round, I wouldn't be surprised by any means if it was 6th, 7th round pick. But I like him personally. I like him. I just can see something there. And then lastly, my number 10 player is Kobe King from Penn State. I could actually see him getting drafted ahead of a Jay Higgins. I just, for whatever reason, I like the intangibles of Jay Higgins more. I got a lot of Big Ten guys on my linebacking list. I think I've got
good conference for the position.
Yeah, I've got to start out, I have 4 SEC players, and then from that point on, I've got 4 Big Ten players. I've got a Big 12 player and an independent. So basically 2 conferences are running this position for me. But yeah, for all the reasons you said, Kobe King, I like him for the same reasons. I thought your analysis of him was pretty spot on. He's just a little bit lower on my list is all.
That's because I ended up watching a ton of film of him. I
think some of these guys
so much fun to watch.
And I'm going to revisit these, and by the time it's all said and done, when April rolls around, Jake, this list might look completely different for you and I. That's just kind of how the draft and how watching these players. The more you watch a player, the more you like them. Sometimes you watch more of them, and you're like, ugh, I think I like him less than I did during the first tape I watched him, and so. We'll kind of revisit these. I don't know if we'll talk about it too much on air, but we'll definitely revisit these, and we'll give you any updates that we possibly can. But we haven't decided who we're going to talk about next week, but it will probably be on the offensive side of the ball. I'm thinking wide receivers, maybe a little bit of tight end. I'm thinking tight ends or wide receivers might be some pass catchers might be in store for us coming up next week. But that is going to do it. Jake, any final thoughts, final testimonies for these linebackers before we log off?
These, even more than running backs, are subject to change. I had a really hard time getting some of the, because other than like Kobe King, I had a really hard time kind of ranking some of these bottom linebackers in that bottom 5.
And I'm going to be honest with the people, because I'm not a liar. This week has been crazy busy for me, and with hauling around kids and stuff. So if I don't have a little bit of time, on my lunch break or whenever I get home with the kiddos or whatever, I haven't had as much time to watch these guys as I would like. So I'm going to revisit some of these guys that I got to briefly watch just for a moment, maybe a game and a half of tape that I saw on some of these guys, and really kind of dive deeper and maybe, the rankings shift a little bit. Some of the projected rounds that I think that they should go might change a little bit. So with all that being said, I think that's just kind of par for the course.
Yeah. I mean, you would think we would have done offensive line first because I think everyone knows my love for the offensive line position. The reason we're holding off on that is I want time to watch as
Right.
much film as possible on
Yeah.
it. And I work at a CPA firm, so I don't do taxes. I do financial statement audits, but regardless, I need time to do that. Right now, time is not exactly something I'm rich in. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to hold it off till I have a little bit more time to really watch a lot of film.
Jake, what would you rather do? Tight ends, wide receivers, real quickly. I think this tight end class is fascinating.
I want to do tight ends. I think tight ends going to be a lot
So
of
next
fun.
Saturday, put it on everybody's calendar. We'll do top 10 tight ends, maybe 5, but this tight ends class is pretty intriguing to me. It might end up being 10.
I want to see where Gunnar Helm. I'm loving watching NFL scouts discover Gunnar Helm.
Yeah,
and being like, oh my god, this guy's senior
we
film's
knew Tyler
amazing.
Warren. Yeah, we knew Tyler Warren, but dang, Gunnar Helm, he's fun to watch. So, all right, man, let's go ahead wrap this episode up. For your daily fix of all things Texas Longhorns, this is All in Horns. I'm Tanner Carlson. That is Jake Jimerson, and as always, ladies and gentlemen, welcome.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.